In this lesson, we will create helpers that will act as anchor points for our vertebrae bones. So the helpers we're about to make will be path constrained to our spline, so that as the spline deforms, of course, the helpers will follow, and that will in turn drive our vertebrae bones. So this is going to be a really neat setup. Now you might also ask, why not just go ahead and work with Max's spline IK solver? It's going to work well in some cases, but in others it's best to build your own custom spline. That way you get the exact twisting you want. So again, we'll take a closer look at this as we start to add more to our vertebrae rig. And then we can also compare the two, because we will use Max's spline IK for our neck rig. All right, so we don't get ahead of ourselves. Let's go and create a helper object and create a point helper. I'm going to add that to the scene, and let's go ahead and take a look at its properties. So under the modify panel, I'm going to go ahead and have the display set to box. That's fine, but I'm going to go ahead and decrease the size on this to about 8. We don't need it to be so large, but just large enough for where it's very easy to go in and grab. And then keep in mind that we will be using other helper objects, again, to have the rig function properly. And with that being said, it's a good idea to adjust your size of certain helpers that may overlap. All right, so with this one now made, I'll go ahead and head over to our layer browser and add this to objects to hide. All right, and then following that, we can go ahead and rename this. So given that this is a point helper, I'm going to give it a prefix of PT. Vertebrae A01. All right, so this is going to be our start point. All right, let's go ahead and have this constrained. Now, I'd highly recommend that you go ahead and add to your animate quad menu to access certain tools a lot faster. So you can see I've customized it, and it's very simple to do in 3ds Max. I'll just give you an overview. If you like a more extensive view of this process, feel free to take a look at facial rigging in 3ds Max. But I'm going to go ahead and just head over to Customize User Interface. So at that point, under the Quads tab, I went ahead and selected the Animate Quad menu, and then just went ahead and started adding these tools to the list. And I've used separators to organize things. So you can see that bone objects and our IK solvers have been added to a section. I've also added the attribute holder. That's going to help us to create clean custom parameters. Here are our constraints in their own section. I've also added a section for our weighting when it comes time to edit deformations, groups, things like that. So you could just go ahead and find them in this list. For instance, if we needed to find our path constraint, we could just hit the P key to go to that section and scroll down. Hopefully I don't pass it. And there it is. And it's just a matter of dragging and dropping. Simple as that. And then you can go ahead and save this out. All right, so I'll go ahead and now close this out. Alt right click, grab the path constraint, select the spline. All right, you can see that by default, there's animation on this object. We want that to be cleaned up, removed. So with the object selected, it's just a matter of alt right clicking and choosing delete selected animation, and now we're good to go. Let's go ahead and grab the spline, head over to our modify panel and go to the vertex of object, grab the start point and start to move that. You can see the helper will follow, and notice the flexibility we get. This is going to be really neat. Now with this flexibility, remember I pointed out one of the issues we'd run into? Well, that's going to cause our end section to kind of stretch a bit. So I'm going to go ahead and show you a really neat way we can prevent that. But that's going to be further down the line when we get into painting weights and things like that. Okay, so I'll now exit the vertex subobject. We can grab the spline, or the helper that is. I'll now hold down shift and create a copy. We can go ahead and rename this one from here to vertebrae B01 and choose OK. Let's go ahead and take a look at our path properties on this object just to get an idea of how much this has moved down the spline percentage-wise. So I'll head over to our motion panel, as we start to scrub down, also again making sure we're under our position list, you can see that we've moved this to about a value of 14.5 degrees down the spline. Just go ahead and round out that value. So now we can use simple math to evenly space the other copies we'll need to create. Another choice you have, of course, is just aligning them along each point. But if you find that your points aren't as evenly spaced as you like them to be, again, math always works. So I'll now go ahead and hold down Shift and create the next clone. And we know we have about 9 points. So I'm going to go ahead and just clone this about 6 more times and choose OK. Okay, so we should be good to go. We can now go ahead and fix the others by heading over to our percentage field. So the next one's going to be set to 29. The next one is 43.5. Okay, great. We can move to the next. That's 58. The next is about 72.5. We just have 2 more. The next one here is going to be set to 87, and the last, of course, to 100%. Okay, so now if we were to again test this out, go to our subobject level, grab a few of these points. Again, the helpers are going to follow exactly the way we'd like them to. Now you can see a few of these humps we get in the spline. That's going to be taken care of when we start to edit the spline deformation. So again, another really interesting topic that we will get to momentarily. But at this point, again, just taking it one step at a time, it'd be a good idea to go in and rename the rest of these. So that's going to be renamed alphabetically. So that's C, D01, then E. And you'll see a lot of similarities in the naming structures that we will use, because that's going to help us to find objects a lot faster. So this one is keeping track. That was E. So the next one here is F. Then G and H. Okay, great. So all of these have been renamed and they're stored in their layers. So we are good to go. Things are looking nice and clean. So at this point, I'll go ahead and stop the lesson. Let's go ahead and continue working on our spline. So by the following lesson, we'll be able to set up our vertebrae bone objects.